Start the recording, please. This is the meeting of the Timberlane Regional School Board. Kat, could you take the roll, please?
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kim Farah.
Here.
Barbara Kishka.
Absent. We're going to make a motion to call her in, but mark her absent for now.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah McNamara.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Kristen Savage.
She's excused. She had a very valid reason for not being here.
Jennifer Silva.
I'm here.
Lee,
I'd like to make a motion to allow Barbara Kieska to participate remotely via phone.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sean seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-0. The motion carries. So Lee, if you want to call Barbara in.
I will do that right now. Dean, I'm going to put her up to the mic so she can announce herself. I just don't know if you're going to get any feedback on that.
Hi. Barbara is currently unavailable. Please leave a message.
Okay, we're going to try that again.
Hi, Lee?
It is. Yeah. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, I can.
All right, you're in the meeting, Barbara.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
If-
thank you.
If you want to participate, just hit the pound key and I'll hear the tone.
Sounds good.
Okay, so if you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sounds a lot better here than it does
Thank
on.
you. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. We have the September 3rd minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the regular business meeting, September 3rd meetings.
Sheila makes a motion to approve the September 3rd. Is there a second?
Second.
Jen seconds. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
8-0. All right, moving on. Are there any delegates and individuals that wish to speak? Do we have the form that's filled out? No?
I didn't see any.
Okay. So if you wish to speak when you come up, could you please announce your name and your town, please, for the record? Do we have delegates that wish to speak?
Either Mike?
Yeah, I think either mic will work. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Well, if it doesn't work, you can move over here. Please go ahead and come forward. Go ahead, you can start.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Stack, resident of Plastow, New Hampshire. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I saw our superintendent's announcement today about grades 7 and 8, and I got to express some disappointment that we're still working on some staffing issues at the middle school. I recognize you can't answer some of these questions tonight. I know the drill. I spent 6 years on this school board myself. But I would ask board members to be thinking about things as you're working with the superintendent on this issue as to whether or not you've exhausted all possibilities to get all certified specialists, coordinators, et cetera, moved into classrooms if you could. If you've looked at multi-age, grades 6, 7, and 8 classes, working on a different schedule at the middle school, taking a look at some higher emergency certification procedures to get college kids in. Folks, I'm a school administrator myself. I'm dealing with all the same issues. I know it's not easy, and believe me, I thank you for all that you're doing. Thank the administration for all they're doing, but we got a massive equity issue at the middle school. I can see it firsthand. I've got 4 of my children attending school right now, and 1 sobbing at home, hearing that he's still not going to be able to go to school as he watches his siblings do it. As a district, we've committed to hybrid learning. That's a decision this district has made, but we're not providing the same opportunities for now 2 of the grades in this school district. We've got to look deeper. I'm happy to help if you're interested in that. I'm willing to do that. I understand there's confidentiality issues to some of it, but I'd love to be of service if I could. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good evening. John Goldman from Sandown. First, I want to thank the board for taking the time to listen this evening. I'm not going to rehash what most people are describing as their experiences with school this year. With the exception that I think we can all agree Remote 1.0 was a disaster and many students were not served well. I will say that Remote 2.0 seems to be marginally better, and that is up to each individual person's opinion. My son does not learn well remotely, and he needs personal interaction. I want to look at the current scenario with facts and data. That's my job. That's what I do every day. I don't make decisions based on emotion or fear, just facts and data. My question, and I don't expect an answer right now, as some are rhetorical and some deserve an answer that I'm not sure the school board can provide today. Before I ask the questions, though, I'd like to present you with some data. First off, I think the response to COVID-19 in March and April was probably the correct response. We had a virus that we knew nothing about, and there was a lot of data and facts being thrown at us, and it made sense to close everything down. However, here we are 6 months into this pandemic, and we know so much more about this virus today. We know that it largely affected elderly people, those with multiple comorbidities over 60 or 70 years old, depending on which data you look at. Hold on, there we go. We also know that it barely affected children. There's been one death in New Hampshire of an underage child, and it was not from COVID-19, but a complication of it. I'm certainly not trying to marginalize anyone who was sick or passed away or had friends or family that was sick or passed away, as every life matters. In this instance, each of these people had families. Fast forward to 6 months later, and let's look at the data that our district of about 25,000 residents has, at most, 8 cases. And even that number is debatable. I looked at the active case map this morning, and as you know, towns with less than 5 are displayed as 1 through 4, so you don't have an actual number. Nonetheless, Sandown has 0, Atkinson has 0, Danville and Plastow are showing 1 through 4. Worst case, if we take them at 4 cases each, that means out of 26,000, there are 8 cases total. That's 3/100ths of 1% of the district population. If we look at the county as a whole, there's 84 cases out of about 309,000 people. That's 2/100ths of 1%, a smaller number than the district's infection rate. I hear reference to CDC guidance, which is great, but the CDC is basing the numbers on the country as a whole and is certainly more of a political entity now as opposed to our own New Hampshire Health and Human Services. And I don't think anybody will argue that New Hampshire has done a much better job than other parts of the country. We never had a surge as predicted. There is no evidence that we will have a second surge at this point. And our own state epidemiologist has released guidance showing when schools should be considering in-school, hybrid, or remote. Using those numbers, we should be in school in person 5 days a week. This is a multifaceted approach, and we should be looking at all of the data, all of the guidance, and not just picking and choosing one data source. I know there's multiple federal laws that were created in response to COVID-19, including laws to protect workers. But these laws were created by the immediacy when COVID-19 first came around. Those laws have not been further developed, amended, or changed to meet the current situation that our country faces. My question to the TTA and the TSSU is what's changed? The staff that is using those laws legally to their advantage is the same staff that has been on vacation, goes out to dinner, goes to church, goes to Walmart, goes shopping. So if they can go out and not self-isolate due to risk every day, then what's the difference during the school day? Especially when our numbers couldn't really be any lower. Every other sector has opened, albeit with restrictions. Every other sector has still opened. Nothing has changed for our children today versus a year ago, except they're not in school. The students are socializing. They're going out for dinner. Their families are socializing together. They're going shopping. They're going to Walmart. They're going on vacation. The only thing that's changed is they're not in school 5 days a week. How come other districts have been able to be in school in person with very little drama and quite successfully too, mitigating any infections as they come up? For years, we've been told by this district that the parents are not the professionals, that the teachers and the educators are the professionals, and that we should leave our children's education to them. Well, not by choice. We have become the educators and the professionals. We're educating our children now, and many of us never signed up for this. We're doing this at home. Many parents have had to have one parent stop working, adjust hours, or possibly affect their jobs, or worse, in some cases, lose their jobs. I agree school is not daycare, but as parents, we have adjusted for months, and the social contract in this country relies on school. Whether both parents should be working to make ends meet or not is a different issue that we're not going to fix today. We have teachers teaching from rooms by themselves with masks on. We have teachers from home teaching students who are in school. We have students being taught core classes by paras, and we have teachers interrupting their room classes so that they can tend to their own children. We have students with district devices. We have students using personal devices, their mom or dad or their cousin's old cell phone or tablet. Anyone in IT knows when you bring your own device, you bring a whole new set of problems, which was seen just today in Massachusetts with some inappropriate behavior that occurred prior to a Zoom class. So question for the TTA and TSSU is, what's the plan? Where do we end up? What puts us back in school, in person, like normal? The current MOU brings no hope that that will happen soon, if at all. Will the next battle be mandatory vaccines? Because to use a catch-all strategy like vaccines for everyone, or when the virus is eradicated will put us back in school, aren't viable or achievable options, and the same as putting our heads in the sand. The school board, as well as many parents and taxpayers, have clearly stated they want to be back in school in person. Looking at the data again, it certainly doesn't support the draconian measures that we're undertaking. I haven't even touched on the socioeconomic factors that the situation impacts. I believe the school board and a majority of the parents are done with this. We want to be in school. Other districts are in school and performing quite well. Not to diminish the teachers and staff who are working every day in school with our children. I want to thank them for their dedication. So I've asked the TTA and the TSSU, what is the plan? At this point, parents are screaming for relief. Parents are screaming to be back in school. And the only way that that can happen, even with a remote option for students that choose to be remote, is if the TTA and the TSSU agree to it. We're being handcuffed by the union, this 1950s era union control. Beginning next year, the TTA will begin negotiations on a new contract. I predict the parents will demand from the negotiating team that that contract goes backwards regarding pay and benefits. If we are doing remote learning as we are now, with no hope to be back in school, pay and benefits must be adjusted. And they will be, or the contracts will not pass muster with the voters. More concerning is deliberative session next year. How much will the budget be cut during budget process? How much will it go up? How much will those at deliberative session remove from the budget? 5 million, 10 million, 15 million? These are numbers that have never ever been floated in this district, but they're being floated now for no other reason than to demand back to school full-time options. If we're not conducting an full-time or close to full-time in-school learning, how much should be removed from the budget? If the TTA and the TSSU continue down this path, our district will be financially decimated and there will be no jobs to come back to. If we're not going to be in school in person 4 to 5 days a week shortly, within weeks from tonight, then why don't we consider laying off the entire district, selling every building, and maintaining just an SAU? And then we can enroll the students in VLAX, district-wide. VLAX has been doing online learning remarkably well since 2007. And instead of spending $72 million trying to do remote learning and bungling our way through it, we could cut our education budget to 10 million, 5 million. I don't know what the number would be, but it would be far less than 72 that we're spending today. Parents, residents, taxpayers, school board members, and teachers, ask your TTA and TSSU, what is the plan? What is their plan to educate our children? Our children's entire future is apparently in their hands, and they have demonstrated zero flexibility. When they wrote an MOU adding extra sick days, questioning how they would be evaluated in the classroom this year, and asking about meals and breaks, it no longer was about the students or their education, it became about the teachers. Remember this during deliberative session and at the voting booth. The data simply shows we do not have a COVID-19 issue in this county, in any of our towns, and certainly in the district. We must return to full-time in-person school quickly, or we will not have a district to return to, and the blame will be squarely on the shoulders of the TTA and the TSSU. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman.
Hi. I don't really have much to say, except that...
Sorry, could you just state your name
Kelly
and your
Rue,
town?
Danville. Except that we've been here, and Mr. Doobie, Lee, you have yet to look up while the parents talk. You are constantly flipping your papers. You are on your iPad.
Taking notes.
Okay, but you're still flipping. You're not watching the parents that are up here expressing their concerns. Several of you actually are looking down instead of giving them the eye contact or the attention that they deserve. A handful of you, thank you, Ms. Sheila, have looked up Mr. O'Neill. Other people have been
Well, to come to Lee's defense, I'm doing the same thing, but I have had the luxury of reading Mr. Goldman's letter prior to this meeting, so I knew
Right,
exactly
so
what he
I
was
just,
talking about.
I just feel that it's more personal if we actually acknowledge the people that are up here, you know, when they're up here for a shorter period of time, rather than constantly looking down and giving them that acknowledgement is a little bit, I think, more personal and makes them feel like they're actually being heard. So, that's all.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can I get her last name?
Sorry, could you state your last name again?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this another Danville person? Just joking.
Stephanie Doobie, Dan.
It's one or the other. I need to be able to read, actually. So good evening. As most of you know, I'm a former...
Stephanie, could you just stand a little closer to the mic? I was told that unless you're really right on the mic down there, that people can't hear you at home.
Enough. Thank you. Stephanie Doobie, Danville, New Hampshire. Good evening. I am a former school board member, taxpayer, and resident of Danville, New Hampshire. My son, a 5th grader, is enrolled in a private school in Bradford, Mass., and has been back at school full-time for the past week. I have many friends and family members in Timberlane, and I care deeply about the health and well-being of all kids in this district. I come before the school board to speak about remote learning and its injurious effects on Timberlane's kids academically, socially, and emotionally. Some parents have been berated for their views on how remote learning has affected their children and are accused of not appreciating the teachers. This is patently false, unfair, and unacceptable. These parents should be able to speak about their concerns for their children without being denigrated on social media or elsewhere. I have been asked to read statements from 3 parents in the district regarding their experience with respect to remote learning, and I'd like to read them now. Statement number 1. Our house has always been my kids' safe space. I've always told my kids, if you need anything, ask. If you need help, ask. Now, because I'm forced to work at home and in the field, I am telling my children, I can't help you. I'm sorry, I have to work. You need to leave mommy and daddy alone. We have meetings, I'm going out on a visit. I'll try to help you later. Honey, shut the door. Honey, lock the door. I have an older child who is able to get the work completed. Unfortunately, this child is being ignored daily due to our other child who needs constant attention, which we cannot provide. Tired, drained, depressed, sad, overwhelmed, lost, confused, withdrawn, angry, scattered, agitated, failure, and desperate. These are the adjectives I use when I talk about remote learning with my 4th grader with ADHD and an IEP. These same adjectives my child would use describing the remote learning days. Is this fair? We as a community go to grocery stores, restaurants, and people are at work. We practice 6 feet, masks on, wash hands, and sanitize. When we go to Market Basket, do we leave with COVID? No, because we follow the CDC guidelines. Our children and community are suffering. Statement number 2. We are in our 2nd week into school and remote learning, and it's not working for my 5th grader. He barely scraped by in the spring, learning absolutely nothing. He did okay last week, the first week of school, and I thought, yes, this is going to be so much better. So he did his 5 days of remote learning, followed by 2 days in school, then back to remote learning. Okay, so now I'm thinking this is really confusing and inconsistent, but I kept quiet. I bet he was thinking along those lines too, because today he had a total meltdown. He refused to participate in the Zoom meetings, wouldn't do his work, and cried. I told him he could take a break for the rest of the day, finish his work at night, and try again tomorrow. More crying. He said he can't do this. He can't do his schoolwork at home. I get it. School is school and home is home, just like a lot of parents that can't get away from their jobs while working at home. He can't get away from school invading his home. They are not meant to be one and the same. It doesn't work that way, especially for a young child. And why can kids go to camps, after-school programs, the Y, sports, friends' houses, stores, restaurants, beaches, arcades? But not school. Adults can do all that, but kids are made to feel that they are imprisoned, dangerous to society, and dehumanized. They are taking the brunt of all of this, and for what? So what is really the problem they can't go to school? You can't tell me it's the pandemic. The numbers and statistics just don't support that. Other schools in the area had opened just fine. Why are we any different? I'm on the verge of losing my job because my kids can't do what they're meant to do. I have 2 weeks until I have to be back at work physically, but I can't be. Is my middle schooler really going to get to go next week? Or will that be yet another unnecessary disappointment for these kids? What are we making them suffer and struggle for? Please tell me that. But don't tell me that it's for anyone's safety, because how are we as a community going to handle the first suicide of a parent, teacher, or child that has reached their breaking point? At least they didn't die of COVID, right? Statement number 3. My second grader hates it as well. I know the teachers are trying their hardest, but there is so much wasted time during the day. 45 minutes of screen time just to say good morning. The Zoom classes just are not practical for younger kids. I would rather be given the assignments and allow the students to get them done at their pace. We're going to start getting together with a classmate a couple of times a week just so that they can at least have each other's company. It's also really tough for him when he waits so long to have a chance to speak or share something, and then the Zoom freezes, or they simply feel rushed because there are too many students. I understand that it's just the first week, so I'm giving it a chance, but if it continues, I'll have no choice but to homeschool without the school's remote support. He has an IEP, so he's already behind, and he can't afford to waste his days in front of a computer simply for the attendance. It's really sad to watch. Those parent letters illustrate that remote learning is not sustainable, and this district needs to figure out how to get these kids back in school, and it needs to be done now. Remote learning is not as good as in-person learning, and we are seeing the effects of this within our district. While some kids are doing well with remote, we're hearing more and more kids who are having meltdowns, crying, have checked out, and have just plain done by 11 o'clock. This is not sustainable. Some kids are refusing to engage at all via remote. The emotional strain being placed on these children by this school district, with and without IEPs, is long-ranging and damaging. Moreover, there is no reason these kids can't be in school. The data shows that there have been only 9 hospitalizations in children 0 to 19 years of age, and no child has died from this virus, thankfully, within the state of New Hampshire since the state started tracking in March. Why on earth aren't these kids in school? What metrics are being used by this district? Salem, New Hampshire, among other local districts, not only has gone back to school full-time, but they recently had a student test positive for COVID. Here's part of the response from the superintendent, Michael Delahunty, in his lengthy email to the parents. Quote, I remain resolved to continue our plan because I firmly believe it's the best option for our students, end quote. Salem, New Hampshire, with over 3,500 kids, has been able to figure this out, and yet Timberlane has not. Do they value their students and teachers any less than Timberlane? Are they risking the lives of the kids by going back? Of course not. Salem, New Hampshire figured out how to get back to school safely, period. In Salem's case, they also figured out that kids don't need to wear masks all day, only when they're in the common areas. That's a huge win for the kids, and it's a common sense approach. I sent the Salem, New Hampshire fall reopening plan to this Timberlane school board on July 15th, hoping it would be used as a template for Timberlane. No such luck. I'd like to know if Dr. Cochran has contacted Salem superintendent for best practices regarding their opening plan, and if not, why not? I would respectfully ask that if you haven't, that you place a call to him to start getting this district on track. The families of this district are depending upon you. Creativity and problem-solving skills are needed right now in Timberlane. Not in December or next fall, but right now. The social fabric of our community and our district is deteriorating rapidly, and children are bearing the brunt while having the least amount of risk. If teachers are so concerned about their own safety, they need to step aside and let another teacher come in. The fact that TRSD does not have children in the classroom full-time 5 days is not because of children's safety. Other schools have understood the importance of having kids in school as a means to actually keep them safe. Safe from depression, anxiety, loneliness, suicidal thoughts, academic slide, food insecurity, and overall emotional distress. Schools are desperately needed in many ways, some more than others. This district needs to push back on the TTA, work on a new MOU with reasonable metrics, and get the kids back in school. For those who want to continue remote, they should be able to continue to have this option. The stress on the parents is immeasurable, and this direction is stunting the emotional and academic development of the kids in this district. The other piece of this, which needs to be addressed, but which is rarely talked about, is the fact that we have parents in our district who are forced to make a choice between working to keep a roof over their kids' heads or staying home and risk losing their job, thereby possibly losing their house. Not having the kids go back full-time 5 days is an abject failure of this district. The New Hampshire state data supports sending them back, not keeping them home. Again, 6 months of data from the DHHS shows that there is no reason to not move forward with full-time learning. To be blunt, the only thing differentiating the return to full-time for my son's school in Bradford and Timberlane's is the teachers union. In fact, Charter schools are open, private schools are open, and other public schools are open, having already worked it out with their unions. We need you, the school board and the superintendent, to stand up for the parents of this district and take the necessary steps to get these kids back to school in person, 5 days.
Hear, hear.
The memorandum of understanding clearly states under page 6, the section entitled Authority, number 3, that they, quote, the parties agree to continue to work together in good faith to discuss and, if necessary, modify the MOU as conditions necessitate. Neither party will unreasonably deny requests to discuss proposed modifications to this MOU, end quote. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the conditions necessitate the modification of this MOU. Enough is enough.
Thank you. And could I remind everybody that you do need to have your masks on in the Timberlane buildings? Sir, would you like to go next?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, my name is Chris Rue. I'm from Danville. This past summer was a big change for my family's life, and I think a lot of my thunder's been stolen, so I'll just make it short and sweet. I retired from 25 years of military service, to which my children have been to schools all over this country. There have been lots of issues that the school boards and the administrations have handled, some well, some not so well. Schools are definitely, some were better than others, and everything's the way it is. That being said, I'm from New Hampshire, and I moved back to New Hampshire. I brought my California wife to New Hampshire, which was fun, and she's loving it, except for schools. We have children, they're in school. My son has taken to New Hampshire like I did when I was a kid and I moved up here. I can't keep the kid inside. He wants to play in the woods, he wants to catch frogs, he wants to go fishing. That being said, one thing he's not doing is making friends. We live in Danville. Neighborhoods are spread far and wide, which is great because I love living in the woods. But that being said, it's not an apartment complex. There's not kids all over the place. My son was really looking forward to going back to school, and I assured him, after coming from Massachusetts, don't worry, bud, we're going to school. You're going to meet kids. Well, now he's sitting on his computer during the day. He actually sits on my computer, like what previously mentioned. Now it's my computer, so who knows what he's going to do, but he better be appropriate. He's little. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Thank God I can work from home now. I retired and I can work from home. And so I can be there for him. But I also have a job, and he's also not my only kid in school. But it's not about me. It's about them. I didn't enlist in the military to serve myself. I served you. I served them. I served all of your families. And I would do it again with my entire life, because that's what matters. As educators, they come to school to teach our future, the future of this country and the future of the world. And if they're not doing that, what are they doing? I know my son is having an incredibly hard time. My family's having an incredibly hard time. But it's not just my family. It's everyone's. So I understand a lot of teachers don't want to come back to school. Cool, let's find some new ones. Let's pay them a fair wage and get them back to school. That being said, like was previously mentioned, the voters are going to have a say. And if they don't want to come back to school, or they want to really argue a lot, okay, well, the voters are going to change things. And I'm not one to run around holding signs and yelling, but if I'm going to be listened to, I will absolutely stand up, especially for my children, your children, their children, everyone's children. So my son is also asthmatic and has allergies. And if he coughs once or takes his mask off because he's having a hard time breathing, he's going to get punished. There's repercussions for his actions. The problem is that his doctors have told him at no point should that child wear a mask. Okay, I probably shouldn't either, but you know what? It's more important for me to talk to you than it is for me to breathe better. So here I am. Please, please, for our children, for your children, for everyone's children, let's get the district running. Thank you.
I'm Kira McDonald. I am from Atkinson, New Hampshire. I have a 6-year-old daughter named Kinley, and she joined the Atkinson Academy for the first time this year. I'd like to speak to some of the troubles we found to be truly soul-crushing as parents in our home. Remote learning. It's watching your child sit staring into space while she's supposed to be engaged in learning, while you gently remind her for the 7th time in 1 hour to pay attention. It's watching your daughter melt in front of a screen that we spent the last 6 years of her life monitoring. It's watching the light, It's watching the light being pulled from her eyes while the excitement of learning slowly disappears. It's knowing your child will have a negative impression on school for the next 12 years after this is through. It's knowing that if we want her to absorb 50% of what is being delivered, we need to hover over her for 6.5 hours. It's knowing that she could potentially have a learning disability that would need extra services and not even having it acknowledged. It's knowing that as parents, there's nothing you wouldn't do for your children, and knowing that you are completely helpless. It's knowing that her teachers are doing the absolute best that they can, but via Zoom, it will never be enough. It's knowing that 6-year-olds aren't meant to be tied to seats to learn independently. It's feeling that she will be fundamentally behind for years to come. It's knowing that in 1st grade, her mind should be focusing on letters, sounds, numbers, and reading, not how to navigate through Google Classroom to watch different YouTube videos. It's knowing that the only way you can get your child the help that she needs is pulling thousands of dollars from your savings account to school her privately. It's also knowing that your neighboring towns have figured it out with simple solutions like plexiglass, good hygiene, masks, and social distancing when possible. I'm speaking on behalf of the troubles inside our home. We are lucky enough to have parents present in our home while she's remote learning, although we are passing shifts in the night, quite literally. We also only have 1 child remote learning. I can't even begin to imagine the pain of larger families and parents who are working from home. There are 3 scenarios the Timberlane families were asked to choose from what they would prefer: full remote, hybrid, or 5 full days. The school board has made major accommodations for 2 of those categories, turning schools upside down, inside out, and changing the way school is delivered. But thus far, 0 accommodations have been made for families who not only want, but absolutely need 5 full days for their families to continue to survive and thrive. I appreciate all the hard work you guys have done. I really truthfully do. I hope that our voices are heard tonight and we can move forward in providing accommodations for families who need the 5 full days. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Hi, Melissa Richard from Sandown. I have my daughter Alana with me. She's a senior at the high school. I kind of wanted to touch on a personal note as to what we're experiencing with the remote learning. My daughter's a senior. She's a student athlete. She's top 5% of her class. She has high honors with distinction her entire high school career. She also has a 504 for her anxiety. She chose her senior classes last year, all excited, based on bettering her life and enjoying her last year at Timberlane. Physics was chosen so she could get her scholar medal. Unfortunately, her physics teacher is teaching remotely the entire year. I don't know about you, but I couldn't learn physics online. So, she has nightly meltdowns. She can't see what the teacher is doing while she's trying to do the same thing because she is trying to do split screens on Zoom. Now, this is the remote days and her in-school days. The teacher that is present in the classroom to watch them is no help whatsoever because the teacher has no science background. My 504 specifically states she can ask questions aside. She can't do this in this situation. Guidance has advised her to set up separate Zoom meetings with her physics teacher. As I stated, she's a student athlete. She doesn't get home from practice alone until 7 o'clock at night. So she's supposed to set up a Zoom with her teacher, who has yet to get back to her today from an email at 3:20 this afternoon regarding an assignment and homework assignment. She's supposed to set this separate Zoom up on her own time to get instructions or questions answered in order for her to start her assignment at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So she also has another, she's taking psychology. And this particular class she was looking forward to. She's all about the brain. She's looking to get into chemistry, medicine, everything like that. The psychology teacher is late to log into Zooms because she's tending to her own child that she has at home that she is logging into her own Zoom. After that's accomplished, the teacher is now teaching with a toddler on her lap or a toddler running around the room. I don't know about you, but I can't learn or concentrate with a toddler running around, or if I'm the mom trying to teach a class with the kid running around and hollering. That's what kids do. So that's distracting. So obviously the 504 and the anxiety goes up again. Alana took cooking this year. She wanted to take gourmet pastries, baking. Oh, it's gonna be fun to cook. She gets to cook 1 day a week. The rest are PowerPoint assignments. How is this benefiting her and letting her enjoy her senior year? So her senior year and her education and her mental health is totally at disarray right now. Me as a parent, to watch this child who is a straight A student and feel that her education is jeopardized and her high honors with distinction is going to be jeopardized, it is very frustrating. The teachers need to be in the classroom. They need to be teaching. The seniors this year, and I speak for all the seniors on this point, have had no preparation for college. We have tried to figure this out all on our own because we haven't been in school. No guidance, nothing. Nothing about scholarships, how to apply, nothing. It wasn't taken into thought when we were shut down in March to maybe let's reach out to the juniors and start discussing some of this stuff. They got it was just done. This is a real issue, and this is my personal experience to watch my kid melt down on a nightly basis and try and do homework until 11 o'clock at night after she goes to volleyball practice. She's a 2-year varsity player, straight A's, and she can't get the education or the support that she needs because we're not in the classroom. I beg you guys to get these teachers back in the classroom and teach these kids. This is her last year here. I can't imagine what these other parents are going through with smaller children. At least I have a child that can somewhat do it on her own. But to sit there and watch your child at 17 years old cry and beg you to figure out how to get through this and you have no answers, it's heartbreaking. So I'm just asking, please do something and get these teachers back in. These kids need to be in school 5 days a week, whether they're 6 or they're 17. That's what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Hello, my name is David Bird. I'm a resident of Plastow. And I received the email, phone calls, and all the other messages that were sent earlier today. And a few things I just have to ask is, why was this sent 3 hours before this meeting? Did we truly find out 3 hours ago that we did not have enough teachers for the 7th grade and the 8th grade? Like, proactive communication is the best communication we should do as a region, as any type of communication. I cannot imagine on Monday when everyone came to the school that they actually thought we had enough teachers for the middle school. It's almost like it's a middle child scenario here. And how many truly, I'm sure this will be answered during this discussion, but how many teachers or proctors are needed to have the 7th grade and 8th grade start? And how soon could that be? And Mr. Stack spoke earlier, I'm friends with him. I've offered to leave my job as a director of procurement at a cancer pharmaceutical company, take a leave of absence and help and be part of the solution instead of just letting things continue to unwind. And I just don't understand why, as a school board, it was allowed to just wait until 3:30, 4 o'clock today for that email to come out. There needs to be better communication. My daughter's in 3rd grade. She was excited to go to school on Monday and Tuesday. My wife and I had to tell my son this afternoon, you can't go on Monday and Tuesday. We don't know when you can go. But the 6th graders can go, and at some point the 8th graders can go. But the 7th graders, we don't know. So if there's a number, could you please let that be known? Because maybe the community's willing to help. We're a small community. We should be able to help. I'll take a leave of absence from my job and I'll do whatever is needed. But it just seems like there's no communication, or the communication is last minute. 2 weeks ago we were told everything's going to be great on September 21st. And now on September 17th we're told, nope, sorry, that's not going to work. And also I've heard other members of the community speak, and I'm not going to talk at all in any disrespect, so please don't take this that way. But at the end of the day, I truly do not believe we should be looking at this as the teachers versus the kids. This is something we need as a community to look at and say, what can we do to fix it? We need to think outside the box. Everyone has jobs that you need to think outside the box at some point. You all are doing what you can, but at some point we need to think outside the box. I love gym, I love music, so please don't take this in the wrong way, but maybe we decide that for the next 3 months, gym and music, we get an exemption somehow, or we speak to New Hampshire Board of Education and say, can we repurpose these teachers to be in other classrooms? My son has a broken wrist, and he's supposed to do a Zoom on gym. What's he doing on a Zoom on gym with a broken wrist? And so I just think, in general, we just need, better communication, more communication. No one wants to send out bad communication, but guess what? Half of the communication we're going to get is going to be bad. But we need to know ahead of time so we can prepare. And a simple request of, you know what, we need 15 people with X education or X experience to help us get to January 1st. And then we'll figure out from January 1st to March 1st what's needed after that. But just to say, 6th grade, you're welcome back on Monday. 7th grade, have no clue when you can come back. 8th grade, hoping in another week or so. 4 days before the kids are supposed to be going back to school. That's where I think, as a community, we should be working together, not the school board versus families, the teachers versus the kids, the unions versus... At this point, it's a pandemic. No matter what anyone thinks, no one's dealt with this. Let's work together and just try to figure this out and be adults. At the end of the day, we need to teach our kids how to grow up and be adults and be active in the community, and this is a prime way we can do that, is by being leaders, not just blaming other people. So if there's a number, could you please just say what that number is? And you may find people that might not have a teacher's degree, but may have 20 years experience in a field that could be exempt for 3 months at a lower wage that helps the schools. Like, I'll go on leave the moment I'm told I'm allowed to and come and help 7th grade, 8th grade, whatever grade. But right now, there's no communication on what that is needed, what is needed. And so I just wish that from this, there's some type of itemized list that says 6th grade is good to go, 7th grade we need 24X, 8 these, 7, 5, whatever the number is. And in 8th grade we need 4 people to do this. And I think if we do that, we can all look at this at the end of the year and say, you know what, instead of fighting amongst individuals and not wanting to talk to people because everyone wants to just type everything, we can say we worked as a community to better not only our children, but ourselves as a community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Malfett. I'm from Plastow. My son's entering into the 6th grade. So I'm so proud that so many people have come up here to speak and share more about. Recently, as you've heard, we've received so much backlash that people have been really petrified to speak out in any way or express that anything is going on adversely in their home because of what's happening here. And I'm so grateful to see more people speaking up in that way. Recently, I posted on social media and I asked people, I'll go speak. I've already spoken at this point. You guys know how I feel. Please come tell me your story so I can share it with them. And people started coming forward, and I'll be honest with you, I expected to hear stories of people losing their jobs, money problems. This is what I expected to hear. And it wasn't what people came to me with. Most of the people, and these people are scared to say something, have children on IEPs and 504s that are left with absolutely no resources at home. They have, one woman says she's received one email that went out generally to a bunch of people. Another woman whose son has regressed dramatically since last year said that she's pretty much left with her Google Zoom classes, and the other day they offered up a 15-minute Zoom meeting for her. No reassessment, no figuring out what she could do at home. She's also working from home. And I think it, I also work at a job and we have to make it, we have to make it work and we have to adapt. But at this point in this situation, it feels like we're really prioritizing the potential impact of something that could happen with COVID, instead of prioritizing the potential impact this has on our kids, as you're hearing. I'll be a little more personal. My son has some mental health issues. They aren't all caused by schools closing. They're something we were dealing with. During remote last year, it got a little more severe. So we had to seek him outside help. I did my job as a parent. I got him the help he needed. And now, we're back in school and he's doing well, but he's not getting what he needs. And my son I couldn't ask for someone better. He has, no learning disabilities. He is a gamer, so he is all over that Zoom thing. If I couldn't figure it out, I wouldn't be able to do what he does all day in school. He's easy. He's very responsible. I'm one of those people that have to make the difficult decision between quitting my job and staying home with an 11-year-old or going to work and leaving my 11-year-old home alone. And that's not ideal, and people don't want to talk about the fact that they're making that choice because it's an 11-year-old home alone, and a lot of people would judge that, right? That's the choice we're making. We talk about it. I say, we got to be a team. You behave, you do what you can at school. I go to work a mile up the road. You tell me if something's happening because we have to keep our heads above water, right? I'm the only income in my family. And, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. That's what happens when you talk about personal stuff. So, the things that my son struggles with is working as a team, socializing with other people, learning to take criticism, how to be in an environment with other people and behave himself right, which I'm sure a lot of middle schoolers need to work on. There is no way he would ever get that through his computer, but it's something that should be promised through education, right? I just think, like everybody said, that we're doing a lot of living in the what if something could happen, I could do the same thing at work. We could be shut down again, you know what I mean? There could be a state shutdown, but we need to take advantage of where we are at now. The numbers are low. It is safe to be in person. We need to get these IEP kids reassessed, have a new plan, have a setup for their parents, how they can be more successful. We have elementary kids that they don't know how to zip from a Zoom to a whatever, you know what I mean? They don't know how to do it, and you're expecting them to sit at home for 6 hours on a computer and click through. It's an elementary kid. We know that we are not even reaching baseline education for our children right now. We're not even reaching baseline. So we need to, start taking advantage of where we're at now instead of thinking about what potentially could happen with COVID. Right now, we have an opportunity to get these kids used to this new way of learning, get these IEP kids reassessed from where they've fallen back from last year, and set them up for success. So if God forbid something, this thing could happen and everything gets shut down again, our kids are set up for success when that comes. Right now, they're thrown into a situation where, half the time we don't even know if they're going to school the next day. We don't. We have no clue what's going on at home. So I'm really proud that everyone talked, and I really implore, if anyone's listening at home too, to be respectful of people that speak out. We are the only voice for our children, and we should honestly be the loudest voice in the room. Because everybody should be focused on how do we get these kids into a place that's successful. They're our future. Sorry, that's all I got. Thank you.
Hi, Shelley Whalen. I have 2 kids, grade 1 and 4. I stand tonight to continue to advocate for my 2 sons.
Excuse me, could you just tell me what town you're from?
Oh, sure, Plastow.
Thank you.
To advocate for them, for anybody who feels similar. My kids have been doing their remote learning with me at my work, and to say the least, it's been incredibly challenging to balance all of that. I'm seeing firsthand what the school does not see, which is frustration and just a general lack of receiving the education that we would expect. Although I've heard some positive reviews on how school is going thus far this year, and I do acknowledge a huge effort on my son's teacher's behalf, I don't feel that this model that's been set forth is a one-size-fit-all plan, like another parent had said at the last school board meeting. When the board decided that we'd continue to do remote with some hybrid, like many families, I was asked to simply just adjust. And honestly, that isn't a simple request by any means. I've continued to stay current on what's going on here with the school board and with the meetings. I've been engaging in discussion with other families and other parents. I've been speaking and I've been advocating. And just a few things that I'd like to have known, that just in the advocacy process, I've been called a teacher basher, that I'm impatient, that I have the wrong interpretation of information being put out, that I want something that's unsafe for my child, and that I should stop complaining. And to be blunt, anything that directly affects my child, I'm going to be here to talk about that, because my kids are they're suffering from this. I continue to fight against those unkindly words, and I will continue to advocate for my children and the education so that it is a valuable and significant experience for them. And that's something that remote learning is really lacking in a huge way. Today, this afternoon, I saw Governor Sununu had held a press conference regarding COVID-19, and I quote him saying numbers are exceptionally low, well below 1% in New Hampshire. I urge the school board to continue to watch the COVID numbers as they stay low, and to consider that risk in our state and our county is far below what the CDC provides us for an actual full reopening. That doesn't mean I stand here today and think, let's just go to school next week, because we all know there's a lot to work out still. The recent release of the MOU has left a lot of us wondering exactly what that means for moving forward. And right at the tail end of the MOU, there's a paragraph called duration, which is a really hot topic if anybody's on social media talking about that. It basically says that you're all agreeing that this should be in effect for the 2021 school year, or until all procedures around COVID-19 are mitigated and rescinded, whichever comes first. So I'm just myself, and being involved in watching the news and reading the newspaper, I think all of us are pretty aware that those restrictions, our masks, the distancing, any other precaution we're taking, that's not going away this year, and it's not going away next year. So that's a really heavy thing to read in this contract, to realize that there's a very strong possibility that what you are all saying is temporary is not going to be temporary. People will argue back that you guys have put into the contract that you'll discuss in good faith, but for me that's kind of lost right now, because we see the numbers are low, and in good faith we'd like to see these kids back at school for more reasons than I could even stand here and list. I think failing to plan I'm sorry. And I think that when we fail to plan, we actually plan to fail. 42% of the people who actually took the survey that the school sent out really wanted to see a full return. And quite simply, it's unacceptable to continue this back and forth on how do we move forward. And I think a lot of people are here tonight to just know what is next. How do we move forward? This MOU is not specific on when we take those steps or what those steps should look like. And I also want to just say that America's back to work. All of us are back to work. Everybody's working, and we're making it work. Sometimes you show up to work and it's a little different than the day before, and you adjust. And I think that that's an appropriate thing to do in a school setting as well. Thank you.
Kevin Borba from Sandown. We as well am here representing and sharing stories from multiple families. It is quite sickening at this point that there is fear for people to speak up. Many people are being silenced due to the extreme threats and name calling that have gone on. We all know that as parents, it is our responsibility to be our children's biggest advocate. In life, we aren't all going to agree with what that may look like. However, accusing people of, and I quote, wanting to put our kids in death's doorway is crossing a line. We understand there are parents out there that do not feel comfortable with a full return. That is and should be respected. However, our stance should be respected as well, if it is a choice we feel is best for our kids and our family. We have felt nothing but confusion, lack of communication, disrespect, pushing agendas, and the use of term advocating for the students and children as nothing but, quite frankly, using them as pawn for teachers' own interests. We, as parents, should be advocating for our children's best interests in deciding what is best for them. I ask that you keep an open mind as you hear the last of these firsthand experiences. I personally am in the Carpenters Union. I go to Boston every day. I was laid off for a week during the height of the pandemic. I was called back because the building that I needed to work on was a hospital. I was located directly next to a COVID testing site. But you know what? As scary as this was, with so much uncertainty of the virus in April, my coworkers and I showed up to work and took the precautions that we were told to. We went home every day to our families. None of us contracted the virus. Being part of the Carpenters Union, we could have put a stop to this. We could have fought for our own agenda, but instead, we did our part, returned to work, and kept everything moving forward for this hospital. One grandparent has shared that their child has figured out, and the child quote, "I don't have to read anymore. It will just read for me online if I click this button." Another mom of a middle school student shared that today, on Thursday, her son's teacher has been out this entire week with no sub. She's been assigning work, however, she is not there for questions or advisory. I quote the teacher's message: "There is no direct instruction today for unnamed advisory in all classes. This means do not join your Zoom meeting. I will not be there. There is no sub. Take attendance by writing 'I am here' and signing your name in the comment below." This leaves the question for this mother asking herself, is this going to happen often?
Meg Borba from Sandown. Another mother from Danville stated this: "I wish I could attend the meeting tonight. I am on my 8th straight day of having a splitting headache due to stress directly relating to my children's education. My husband and I bought a house here in 2014. We sought after a house in the Timberlane district for the education system. The previous year, Timberlane had won an award. I believe it was something about being the best district in New Hampshire. How far we have fallen now. I've been a volunteer in the school since 2014, most years, for both of our daughters' classes. I got to meet a lot of staff and wonderful teachers. I know how much they love their students. I know how hard they work. I still call many of them my friends. This year was a big transition year for us, with my oldest going into high school and my middle child into middle school. We also have a 1-year-old. If given the option, both of our kids would have been in school 5 days a week. However, knowing that wasn't an option and that both girls would be doing some remote learning, we spent over $300 on a new router and increased our internet band, which doubled our monthly bill. But to us, this was necessary to prepare and be sure everything would work for the girls since we are in a dead spot in Danville. Even with those changes, by the end of the first week of remote learning, we have had Comcast texts out to our house trying to help. Our service was so bad that only one child was able to be on Zoom at a time during the day, on a good day. We again had to increase our already doubled internet bill. This was yet again another added expense that we are not expecting, but willing to do and figure out, knowing it needed to be. I expected the district and teachers to do the same. Recently, I heard about pins, medals, ropes, and many other awards that these high achievers can receive. We have yet to have the opportunity to discuss the best setup for her high school years. Yes, we can email with her guidance counselor, but that is not going to set my accelerated student up to reach her goals without proper planning with both us and the school. On the other hand, our 6th grader has learning disabilities and is on a pretty strict IEP. She is supposed to have a small group special education setting instruction 3 times a day. She is lucky to receive it at once a day. Today, she waited over 30 minutes for a class to begin, and it never did. Another teacher cut class short so she could take a break, and because she was so overwhelmed with her own young twins at home running around. You see, I can understand that because I have a 1-year-old at home that I struggle to keep quiet all day so my child with a learning disability can concentrate. My 6th grader has not had one full day of school. At best, they have been half days. I can understand there being an internet issue here or there, but it seems to be the same teachers having internet issues consistently. Another thing that upsets me is when my children were unable to attend remote learning because of our poor internet connection, but it was my problem and not the school's problem. But when the teachers have poor internet connection and are unable to do their job, whose problem is that? In the end, it doesn't matter because it's our children that aren't getting an education. It's my middle schooler with a learning disability on an IEP that struggles to learn who is suffering. It's her who is crying, asking me why her sister gets to go to school and she can't. It's me watching my child realize that her education is a joke. It is me shaking my head because my husband and I have done everything in our power to give our children their right to a proper education. This is not something we should be fighting for, which is putting so much stress on us as parents that we are physically ill. We're paying more money for more bandwidth. I'm trying to keep my toddler quiet so my children can learn, but if a teacher can't do the same, my kid doesn't get an education. Lastly, a mom shared with me that her son's teacher has been great. She is extremely engaging, and you can tell how much she wants to make this work as best she can. Thank you, Mrs. W. Your hard work does not go unnoticed. As engaging and wonderful as class may be, we see our son not absorbing the information, us having to repeat teaching after in order for him to do an assignment, stay right by his side to keep him seated at the computer, crying due to headaches, and since when in society is 5 hours a day on the computer healthy, and full-on body sliding across the hardwood floors because he just cannot contain himself any longer. He is so overstimulated that this is causing a downward spiral for him. Educationally, he thrives in a structured setting. Being able to follow along with his peers really helps him hold it together. He is checked out. The regression he has experienced, not only educationally, but emotionally and socially, is extremely concerning. He needs to be with his peers in order to stay on track. Being told during a meeting for an IEP that a neuropsych evaluation is not being taken into account due to the teachers not seeing any of these issues last spring, almost 7 months since a teacher has observed him in person. And a teacher going based off of what she sees on a Zoom class, which is how they have stated they are going to base it, is not any means an acceptable way to base a child's level for services. With 4 formal diagnoses, a personal therapist, pediatrician, and a child's neuropsychologist all advocating for special needs, the refusal to do any testing on the educational level, where are the priorities here? Why are these kids being left high and dry by our district? Lastly, as parents advocating for our children, we would like to know where are the expectations and standards for the teachers. Yes, there are some that are making the most of it, but unfortunately, as in any workplace, there are going to be people that need to be in person to perform to the same level they are expected to do so. This, we already can see slipping away. Children on laps of teachers, teachers not showing up, internet issues, teachers telling students they'll be logging on late because they're helping their own children. This is an issue. This needs to be addressed. Classes need to be monitored. Teachers need to be held accountable. The same standards of providing an equal education need to be given to our students, whether full-time, hybrid, or remote. Our kids deserve more. The basis of this situation we are in right now does not support these numbers. What does support is the personal agendas, the fear, and the unwillingness of many people to do their part. If not now, when the numbers are low, then when? Tonight, all of these parents have stood up here, and we are looking for answers. We are also asking you as the board to please put your foot down, stand up for our children. Of all professions, we have never seen one that is so essential be manipulated and controlled in such ways as the TTA and the TTSU have done. Enough is enough. Please give our children the proper education that they are entitled to. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Kim, I'd actually like to take the floor if you don't mind for a second. At our school board, I see this all the time, you know, my name, of course, out to the front, but in the back of it, we have actually our mission statement, and I'd like to read it. The mission of the Timberline Regional School District is to engage all students in challenging and relevant learning opportunities, emphasizing high aspirations and personal growth. I see this all the time. For the 2 years I've been on the board, I see it every meeting. And hearing these stories that just were presented to us, we are failing our children miserably. And I'd like to say I'm trying to do everything that I personally can, and I know the board is. We have our hands tied a lot of times, and it's unfortunate. And I think we're gonna end up having some serious coming togethers in the not too distant future. That's my personal take on it, and I'll leave it at that.
Hi, I'm Alana Richard. I'm from Sandown. As my mom previously mentioned, I'm a senior. I just want to keep it short and sweet. I know a lot of parents have been talking tonight, but just to speak for the students, we really do want to be back. A lot of us are kind of like, what's the point of going hybrid? Like, why can't we go back fully or just stay all remote? And a lot of us don't understand why someone like Salem can go back when they have so many more students, and we're connected to them through CTE. So we literally have students from Timberland going to Sandown and coming back. Like, so we just don't understand why we can't open fully and at least try it. The students just ask that we try. But I also wanted to ask if you guys had any questions for maybe a student.
Go ahead, Jill.
Have you gone to your guidance counselor?
Yes.
You have gone to see her?
Yes, I went to see her either yesterday or the
Fantastic.
or
I was
Tuesday.
wondering if you got there during the hybrid, because your mother had said that you were unable to get in to navigate scholarships and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, we've been in
I couldn't figure out whether you were
communication.
hybrid or to a remote, so I figured out you
I'm
were
hybrid. I'm in cohort 1.
So my suggestion is to get in there with the guidance counselor and have them show you everything.
Okay.
Because I just had one graduate in 17, and the system they use now is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, college is definitely a whirlwind of emotions.
Yes, it is. And I have one right now in her senior year and going through pretty much the same thing a lot of these parents are talking about, only paying a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
So a lot of virtual classes in college right now too. So, but I would definitely get a hold of your guidance counselor, get it, you know, if you have to go after school, I know it's hard with volleyball. I had 2 volleyball players also. But you got to get in with that counselor.
Yeah.
So she can give you the best information she can.
Yeah, we try and stay in contact as much as possible.
Fantastic.
Lee?
Alana, tell us a little bit about your experience during remote and how that's different when you're live on your cohort 1 days.
For me, it's mostly just, first of all, it is very hard to stay focused. Like, by my last period, and I have a break because I'm a senior, so I have a lot of like free periods and stuff. By the last period, I'm very like just drained and I'm tired and I don't want to be staring at a computer. Sometimes, like my mom was mentioning split screens when we have to do work. We only have one computer and all of our work's on Google Classroom because we're trying to go paperless. So it's very hard to like have a split screen and try and see what my teacher's doing while I'm trying to do it at the same time. It's very frustrating, and I mean, some classes are going okay, I guess. It's not for me personally, just because I need to be in person, like I'm more of a hands-on type of person. But there's definitely some things that could be adjusted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? You good? Okay. Thank you.
I would encourage you to come back our next meeting. Give us an update.
Jen?
This is definitely not for me, so my heart is pounding.
You did great.
You did great.
Thank you for doing it.
Did she have a question?
I don't know,
Just,
Jen.
no, you're, no,
Oh, okay.
you're fine. It wasn't, it was just before we moved on, that's all. Before we moved on to the next agenda item, I didn't know, one thing I hear a lot of, and as a school board member, I have for quite some time been looking at a lot of reopening plans. And I don't know, Dr. Cochran, if you are in contact with other superintendents. Obviously, we know Salem is in school 5 days a week. What other districts are 5 days a week? Do we know? Because I think I've heard of maybe one.
Very few at this point in time. I will be attending a South Central Superintendent's meeting tomorrow morning by Zoom. And over the summer, I did talk to Superintendent Delahunty in Salem about staffing issues and some other things, but not specifically related to the model that they implemented. Based on the information that I have, that the majority of districts in the state are fully remote. The next most common model is something very similar to what we have. One of the difficulties is that the high school uses an AB schedule, as everybody knows, and an AB schedule in this particular situation makes it very difficult to schedule. We'd really looked at, when I first came in, redoing the schedule and trying to get everyone in the cohorts, and it was literally undoable due to the amount of time. And so the model we went to was one that is built around the restrictions of both the AV model and the staffing issues that we have. I think given the circumstances, it gave us the best shot at educating students. I've been in the high school twice since the start of school, once on the first day and once this week, and I've seen a significant difference in engagement of students in the class, the use of teachers with technology. They become, at least the ones that I've seen, much more fluent at juggling that. But there's a learning curve. But people are trying hard. They're trying different things. I think the extra professional development before the start of school was helpful. I think we need to continue to work on that in an ongoing way. But it is difficult, especially for teachers who have never taught with technology, or teachers aren't especially fluent with technology, and we have some people in that situation.
And so I just asked that question because I do want people to hear that, well, yes, there are, a couple of districts that are 5 days. We are certainly not in the minority of not being back 5 days. And I think, I can't speak for everybody on the board, but most of my peers on the board who I've talked to, people do want our students back in the buildings 5 days a week. That is the goal.
That's the goal.
And I applaud all of our staff for even undertaking this hybrid model to try and get them in as often as they can. This is not an easy model to implement by any means at all. I mean, we could have just said, that's it, we are fully remote, like what many districts have done. But we were committed to trying to do whatever we can to get these kids back in these buildings.
Local communities that you had asked about that were going full-time, Hudson, New Hampshire, Londonderry, I know, obviously we've spoken about Salem. I think their take on it was, instead of stressing their community out incredibly and putting all this pressure on trying to go hybrid, they thought, it'd be a much safer option to put themselves in school accommodate with the 3 feet and using the plexiglass. I know personally my niece, she has a sensory processing disorder. She's in Hudson, New Hampshire. She's in the 2nd grade, and she is thriving with their full 5 days in school.
Some of these districts, they're sending to other high schools, and so, well, I don't know that the high schools are full 5 days where they're sending.
So in Hudson, I will speak to that, they are not. So in the older levels, but their thought process on that, because I do actually have a family member in their school district, is that some of the older children have a little bit of an easier time navigating online and a little bit more independence learning online from the 7th grade and up. And they just thought they could utilize their space a little bit easier for the younger children.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward. I do want to say that I appreciate everybody's comments from parents and also from the student. I know it takes a lot to get up there. The board is actively working to try to get students back into these buildings 5 days a week is reasonable. We are looking at the new metrics that came out from the state since the last board meeting, or September 1st. We did not have time to review those. We have implemented new hires so that we can bring students into the classrooms even if we don't have the teachers in there. So we are working, and I do appreciate that we need to get the word out there more. There are interviews going on and there's hiring. There's just a little bit of a lag time. We have hired new people in the special education realm here, and I'll let Susan Rasco speak to that when she comes up, both at the elementary and secondary level. So we appreciate the frustration of the parents. I'm a parent myself. My daughter's online 100% this year in college. So we are going to continue to work, and I think the board is determined to try to do this, and we will try to do as much as we can to think out the box. And parents, always feel free to reach out to board members if you have suggestions. We have a new superintendent, and he's been working very diligently, as has the staff, to try to come up with workarounds. And, on the one hand, we hate to delay the opening for the 7th and 8th grade and not give too much lead time to the parents. As a single parent, I understand lead time. But on the other hand, we were trying to make sure that we
Exhausted everything.
We did everything we could to try to get those 7th and 8th graders. And I would expect that we will we're going to keep moving and try to get those students back in the building. And just some of the comments tonight have helped me think about some other ways that we can move forward to that. The board will be going into a non-public session to speak about personnel later and what we can do. But right now, what's driving the fact that we cannot get back in these buildings 100%, and it's not meant to disparage any group, any person, anybody, is the fact that we cannot staff these buildings right now. And these are people that, there are people that have requested accommodations, and we have to honor those. There are accommodations that are allowed now under the new,
Family First Coronavirus Response
the
Act.
Family First Coronavirus Act that have not been in play before. And we have to honor those requests, and the board is committed to honoring the requests of teachers and staff. So we're working, and I hate to say it, but keep bearing with us. The board's determined to get as many students back into these schools as we can. So thank you.
I just want to make a point to the gentleman who came up about different positions and needs. I know we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but apparently it wasn't put out there community-wide enough. So again, just to put it out tonight, there are positions on the district website under the Human Resources Department for substitute teachers for, I think, pandemic floater still. So those positions are there. If there's anybody in the community interested, willing, I think we increased the rate of pay for the substitute teachers. So it's all out there if anybody's interested and able or willing to apply, that it's there.
The pandemic floater position was one that our HR folks proposed in looking at how we can cover the middle school and high school classes where the teacher is fully remote and students are in the hybrid mode. And the job description was developed. We came up with a salary range. We've posted that. And as of today, we have filled enough of those. We have filled 8, and those 8 people have been really enough. The high school is in, but they're very close to not having enough people to cover. In fact, the only reason we were able to stay open from that sense and have all of the high school students back is the teachers have been volunteering to spend some of their prep time covering classes. They do receive a small stipend for that, and we've been relying heavily on those folks. But that's not a sustainable model, so we need to increase that. And the hires that we have really have led us to have enough confidence that we can actually bring the 6s back. We're hoping if we can hire some more, that would bring us back to the 8s, which is the next closest grade level to come back. But to some extent, you have to understand that even when you're staffed fully, the high school, for example, with its number of teachers, could have 5 to 9 teachers out on any given day with regular routine illnesses not related to COVID, let alone having to quarantine because of a potential exposure and that sort of thing. We're in a teacher shortage nationally. We're in a teacher shortage. We're in a sub shortage. We're going to have a conversation later about increasing our rate of pay for daily subs to try and increase that. The high school has been trying to reach out to local students who left here and attending colleges to see if they could come in and do some subbing. We, I think, reached out to everybody who'd applied for either a para or teaching position in the last 6 months or more to reach out and be proactive. So we're doing just about everything that we can. I want to thank the board for their support in you know, letting us move this quickly on the pandemic floater position. We need to find the money, and the board has been very good about supporting this and trying to open the schools up. It has been their single most important goal since I have been here, and it's still less than 2 months. But the board has been, you know, dedicated to this. They hear you. I think we all understand that kids learn better in schools. I had a great opportunity last Friday. I was in all 5 elementary schools and saw the smiles on teachers' faces and kids' faces and administrators' faces, and looked at regular teaching in a lot of ways. There were a lot of questions about how it would work, and everything that I saw last Friday said that by and large, those students that are in the school, you know, the education is working, and teachers are glad to be there. High school, likewise. I know I mentioned that I've seen some improvement and some change in terms of what's happening there. We did make a significant change in terms of para access for students on IEPs. Last year it was very, very limited in their involvement. This year we have an expectation that all paras will be supporting their students on IEPs remotely, consistently during the day, and take all of the functions as they would normally do in a face-to-face setting and simply apply that through the technology as best as possible. So we have made significant steps. We know there's a lot we have to do. But in terms of getting all students back, or even in the hybrid model, you know, we have some staffing issues and there's some costs associated with that. We have a ways to go, but we're working at it very, very hard. And I can do nothing but commend the administration, building administration, and district administration for the hours that they have been put in, and the quality of work and the amount of work they're doing on behalf of the students, the school, the board, and on your behalf. So I want to thank that. Please hang in there with this. One of the reasons that much we've not been able to predict that far ahead and given as much lead time as we'd like is that the situation is literally changing on a day-to-day basis. So we may get an accommodation request. We may hire somebody to have an accommodation request that kind of cancels that out. And so we have very little lead time to be able to reach out and say, hey, here's where we're going to be in 3 to 4 days. Because while the situation is stabilizing more, we're still having some fluctuation even today. So thank you.
Thank you. Barbara wants to speak.
Yeah, Barbara, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cochran. I haven't seen all of the communications that have gone out, but I'm wondering, do we have a volunteer coordinator that might help with, there was a post on the website with a volunteers form, but that was from 2019. I don't know if that's been updated. I'm just wondering, what efforts do we have to allow people to volunteer in a coordinated manner for proctoring? Or one thing that came up was serving out delivering remote lunches on Wednesdays for people who are, the parents who are home watching their kids, but they can't come pick up the lunch deliveries.
So Barbara's asking, is there a way that parents can volunteer a
We have
formalized?
talked about that briefly, actually, Mr. Peterson. We have talked about that in the past, about the use of volunteers in some capacity. Is that something that's we're still looking at?
Well, with all volunteers, we'd have to have them go through the application process and go through HR and go through that process. We are looking at all options for how do we get people in. As was previously mentioned, we had about 8 that we processed just today, I think, or in the past day or two. But volunteers, if volunteers do fill out those applications, we can look at how we can then use them in the schools. But there is an application, I believe that we can, if it is online, I believe. The volunteer applications. Yeah, so it's in AppleTrack, so they can, people can fill that out, and then we can work with people and work with processing them through HR and getting them to come to the schools.
Could I ask that we have Mr. Henderson put out a blast email to district families, parents, about the opportunity volunteers, that will be reaching out and providing information about how we can do that and coordinate it. And we'll try to get that done tomorrow if he can. I already know he's got 12 to 14 or 15 hours work for him already, and I try not to generate too much more work for him. But Monday at the latest, does it sound doable, Mr. Henderson? All right, wonderful, thank you.
Can I, just one last thing for the parents, because I know there's a lot of information in our agenda packets, like all of this, and some of it is, most of us here work full-time as well, and I was at 1:30 this afternoon looking at my agenda packet and still come in, and there's brand new information in here. So to the point about not paying attention to speakers, I can multitask and listen and pay attention, but there is a lot of information in here relevant to what every single one of you were speaking to. So for me, trying to look through this information and understand its importance and how it relates to everything that everybody is saying, I would encourage you, these agenda packets do get put online after our school board meetings, so you have information available to you about staff requests for accommodations, TTA accommodations, TSSU accommodations, who's requesting these accommodations by numbers. It's all in there if you all want to go look at it after the meeting. I don't know how quickly it's up, but.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to move on to the agenda. Our student representative could not make it today, so we're moving on. The first thing in the agenda, and I am going to try to move through the agenda packet relatively quickly because we will need to enter a non-public to discuss some personnel issues, obviously. The first thing in the agenda packet is the report that was put out, or the fact sheet on transitioning between instructional models and COVID-19. This is dated September 1. I would like the board to consider that we take these guidelines as the basis for when we move from a hybrid to a fully remote to an in-person model. This is rather lengthy, and I know in the school reopening plan that we had just a very brief summary of this, but what I'd like for the next meeting would be to have, and maybe I'm sorry, I'm looking at Mrs. Allaire because she and I and some of the others worked on this, is that we'll have just a new reopening metrics based on the state metrics. We did not have this at the time that the reopening plan was put together by the board, so we'll be looking at this to move from one level to another. So that will be in your packets for next time, but you can now see the state guidance. Right now, we can't move to 100% in person. We just don't have the staffing. Just
looking for a motion to accept this as the metrics that we use.
yes, we can look at this we can accept this as the metrics that we use. These are the state metrics, unless anybody has an objection to that.
How
Sean?
about this? How about we approve it tonight with the condition that it be brought back to the floor at our next meeting to be ratified again, so that we all as a board can ascertain and do our own research on all of it.
Okay. I think probably what, I don't disagree with that, but I think we should just, everybody should take a look at this now that it's in your packet, and we'll work, if anybody's interested in working, we can look at the reopening plan at what we had for the metrics and plug these in. So is anybody in disagreement with following the state metrics now on reopening?
No.
Okay, so that's what we're going to move to. At the time, we didn't. So I'll work with the school administration to update the reopening plan on that page. Okay. Lee?
So if this is the criteria, and it's accepted and implemented into the plan, when do we consider the criteria met and enacted?
When we have enough staff to cover it.
Yeah, 'cause I'm looking at the matrix, and we're at a community transmission of low or minimal, and a level of school impact of medium.
Yeah.
Right, so we have to look at, it's not that this, what's driving what we can do right now is staffing, not the metrics.
Yeah, I know.
So even if we
I'm
input,
just calling out the fact that, we meet the criteria to reopen.
we do meet the criteria to reopen 100%. I agree, based on New Hampshire's guidelines and metrics. The reason we can't do that now is we have got to address the staffing.
The box above it, Lee, talks about staff capacity to conduct classes and school operations.
Yeah. Of the three areas, school transmission, student absences due to illness, we meet the criteria. We look very good in those areas. The third capacity, which was just mentioned, is the staff capacity to conduct classes and school operations. And there are three levels of impact. The low is our normal situation. Medium is strained, which I think we would agree as an administrative team, we're in that category. And the critical is essentially a designation that you have to go fully remote. So we believe we're in a critical situation, but we are in a strange situation. If we had a significant number of teachers no show, we would have a lot of unsupervised students at that grade level, which causes a lot of issues. So it's that impact, and one of the reasons that I think administration and some of the board members like this is that it actually reflects our situation very accurately. And it puts us essentially somewhere in between fully remote and hybrid, and the fact that we're in that strange staffing position and still being able to be hybrid in most of the schools, and hopefully we'll be bringing back all of the grade levels in at least hybrid shortly, is a testament to the amount of work that's been done. So it reflects our situation very well. I think it's a good metric. It was one that I talked with Dr. Farah and school administration about, and we believe that it works very well for our situation.
Okay. Lee? Barbara?
Hi, I was just reading through that statement, and I didn't see anything about CDC or social distancing, keeping the 6-foot distancing in that guidance.
But this guidance is just talking about whether or not the school is open or not. It doesn't look at distancing or anything like that.
There you go.
So, Barbara, I understand your question, but that's not, it's not really, that's not what we're looking at in this particular part of the plan. Sheila? Nothing? Okay. All right. So if the board wants to take a motion, we can, I'd certainly be happy to entertain that we will be using these metrics.
I'd like to make the motion that the district use these metrics from September 1st, Bureau of Infectious Disease Control in our reopening plan.
Okay, Jen makes the motion. Second?
Second.
Lee seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Barbara, are you in favor?
this one.
Okay, so that would be 3, 6, 7. Are you opposed?
I am.
So 710. The next thing in your packet is, there are several summaries here in regards to staffing. I don't know if there's a lot of information to digest here. You can see that what we have, and this will be available to the public, I think, after the meeting, is a list by school, by grade, as to the cohorts, how many students are remote, and also for the secondary. So this is what we're looking at for staffing right now. And if you don't have this information, I just did a rough calculation. It looks like about 20% of there are about 200 remote students in the high school, 580 hybrid students, and middle school. 200 remote students right now in the middle school and 218 in the high school, where our hybrids are 580 and 846. And staffing looks at just roughly about 20% of the staff has requested some sort of accommodation that I think would keep them remote. So we are going to continue to work on trying to ensure that we have enough staff in the buildings. So does anybody have any questions? We will be going into a non-public to discuss staffing in more detail. Brian?
So do we, because one of the public, and I guess I've wanted to ask that question myself for quite some time, is there a number at the middle school that we need?
The number of additional...
A number to open the...
How many teaching
number
staff
you
are
need?
we short at the middle school right now in the 7th grade and the 8th grade that is preventing us from opening?
Mr. Peterson is the man with the numbers.
Well, at the middle school, there's 17 who are approved to be remote only, with another 2, and with another 1 pending. So, you look at that, we need, and with using internal coverage, we believe that we could probably get the middle school fully open with, 10 to 15, proctors.
You need 10 to 15 proctors to get the middle school open.
That's what we believe. We kind of look at this every single day. We've done, the middle school admin team has done amazing work at looking at the duty schedule and trying to rearrange things. But we feel as though, we need about potentially 10 to 15, somewhere in that range. Again, it's dependent upon how many then teachers call in sick that day as well, and we'd need about that same number at the high school.
Okay, now, I'm sure people aren't going to like me to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. It did come up. It's something that's crossed my mind. What are the requirements for middle school? We have to offer English, social studies, math, science. What are the requirements for middle school?
Well, actually, the New Hampshire RSA does indicate that we do actually have to offer all unified arts at the middle school level as well.
We have to offer all unified arts, but what does that mean? Does they have to be offered once a week, once a month?
So that's where the RSA really doesn't get into the detail of how many times does it need to be offered. All of those UAs do need to be offered at the middle school level. So all the UAs that we do run at our middle school have to be offered at middle school level, but there's not a time requirement for them.
Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, yes and no. In terms of when we rescheduled middle school in Nashville, we worked with folks at the DOE, and essentially there's an expectation that if you're in a block period, you would receive about 1/3 of a year's instruction in each across the 3 middle school grades. So that is roughly, if you look at our schedule, that meets that. So there's actually 2 criteria. We have to offer all of those unified arts pieces. At the same point in time, unified arts classes are needed to cover the teacher prep periods for other teachers. And so there's a dual function. The teachers have in the contract, duty time and prep time. And so typically, there's a exact trade-off of what's offered in Unified Arts and the CBA required prep time. I believe that is so in our case, is it not?
It is. Our Unified Arts teachers are, they're with the students when the core class teachers are having their prep. So in that regard, it does sort of fit that dual purpose.
I mean, it's a one-to-one mapping, is it not?
Yeah, correct, it is.
Okay.
So there's no requirement in the RSA beyond that we need to have Unified Arts in the middle school? There's no set time requirements?
Typically, 145 minutes a day across the Unified Arts, across the 6 regulars, across the 3 years of high school, will get you just over that 60 days of instruction. That's the way the math tends to work. In middle schools that
Hold
that
on.
are a 7-period day
Can you
with
say
2
that
Unified
slower?
Arts.
Can you say that slower?
I'm sorry?
Say what you just said again, slower. How
So
much
there's
is it?
typically 6 Unified Arts subjects at middle school.
Okay.
And if they have 45 minutes of instruction a day across the entire year, divide that by 6, it typically comes up to about a third of the need across the 3 years. The state expectation is basically allows for that. So if we have 1 Unified Art period of about 45 minutes a day, every day, and it rotated across the 6, we meet the state requirements across the 3 years.
But I just heard that there was no set state requirement for time.
It's not stipulated, but it's the metric that they use when they're doing the school approval.
The accreditation?
I'm sorry?
The accreditation?
Yes.
NIESC accreditation?
No, the state, when the state has the minimum standards for public school approval, there isn't not a number there, but the last time that it was discussed, they've actually taken the staff person out of that by budget cuts. The person who used to do that actually retired and was not replaced. But the last metric that they used, that's the metric that they were going on, what I just described.
Okay.
That many minutes.
Okay. Any other, Brian?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to that, because I understand about this MOU, but I certainly hope we're just not, if a teacher says, I'm requesting to teach remote, I would certainly hope they have to meet a certain criteria to do that.
I think, Mrs. Lucelle, do you want to speak to how are we? What? We did get that in the packets last time as to how that's worked through, but
It
just
just
very briefly.
It just seems to me we are exceptionally high compared to other districts. So I'm
So maybe
confused.
you can just speak briefly. If I came to you and said I need to be remote, what would you say to me next?
So once we understood what you were asking for, if it was fully remote or per day remote, 2 out of the 4 days, and then we would have to document it. So I would get a doctor's note, or if you lose childcare, we would get that documented, but each and every one is documented. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, so that basically childcare is a legit reason.
Only if it's a loss due to COVID.
Only if it's what?
If it's a loss due to COVID. Can you hear me?
Meaning the daycare closed down.
Due to
so if I'm a
COVID, the
teacher and
school
I
is
have
closed due to COVID.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So if I'm a teacher and I have a child at home and I can't get daycare for that child, then that is an acceptable reason to go remote, and the teacher is allowed to go remote. I'm just trying to explain for people.
There has been a recent update to that regulation as it relates to eligibility, and that's just from this week, correct?
Correct. So if a teacher chooses to keep her children home, or a staff member chooses to keep her children home remote, she cannot use that as a reason for her to go remote.
Okay, so does that mean you're going to have to now go look back at some of these?
We already have.
Okay.
Okay. We're just finishing that up.
Sean?
Yeah, I got a question on Mr. Pedersen's, on this executive summary that we have here, just so I understand the chart here. You have in regards to the TTA contract, you go by the middle school and high school just so I understand it, if, just take the middle school going across there, that you have the different categories of what status, but it says total professional staff is 93. So if you sum the ones to all the columns to the left of that, for example, you'll have 41 of 93 is teaching remote. Is that what that's sort of array is represents?
Negative on that. I think, all right, so let me see if I can walk you through it. So that first column, open unfilled positions. So those are positions right now that are, as the name implies, open unfilled. There's a total of 17 professional approved remote only.
Okay.
Of that 17, 15 of them are classroom teachers. So there's some professionals who are on the TTA contract who are professional status who are not classroom teachers. So it might be a school psych, it might be a guidance counselor, it might be, there's a number of professionals that are in that same boat, that same contract status that are not classroom teachers. So of the 15 there, or excuse me, of the 17 where it says professional staff approved remote only, 15 of them are classroom teachers. So that, you know what I mean? That 15 is nest inside of that 17. And then there's another 2 who, so then that's where you get the 2 that are other professional staff who are approved for remote only. So 17 minus 15 is that 2. There's still 4 more staff members who are still waiting for approval. They've put in paperwork through HR. There's some HR pieces that still need to be met, and so we're still waiting for them. So that might be another 4 added to that. So right now there's 15 out approved remote only, 15 classroom teachers. There's another 4 professional staff waiting for approval.
Of the total pool of 93, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then on the same sort of token, it'd be the same analysis for the high school?
Correct.
Okay.
So when Mr. Peterson was trying to look at what we needed for coverages, and he looked at the schedule of all teachers, the coverages that we needed for teachers who were fully remote but teaching on in a hybrid model, I think we ended up with, if I recall correctly, 69 coverages required in a 4-day week. That was a metric at one point in time?
At one point in time, I mean, that metric is changed.
Okay,
at
where
this
are we
point.
now?
I don't have that metric actually in front of me right now, that exact number of how many
That's the first time I've heard that response from you in 2 months I've been here.
It might happen in 1 or 2 more times.
I know, you'll probably text me when I'm driving home in an hour, and you'll have it for me then.
I mean, I'll get you that metric, but, the metric does change as been equated. Like, I mean, some of this data, we get it, and, a couple hours later, a teacher puts in the proper paperwork through HR, and you sort of have to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out how to sort of adapt. This morning, 2 teachers called out sick, and at the high school at least, and, do we have the subs? Do we have the internal coverage? Like, how do we cover that? So every day is sort of a new challenge in that regard with staffing. And so just at this point in time, that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay. So board members, you also have in your packet an executive summary on special education. Are there any questions? Everybody all set with that? There's a technology update. I know, Barbara, you had requested some information, and that is in there. All right. I know one of the parents, is Mr. Henderson here?
It's right there.
One of the parents came up and spoke to bandwidth issues. I live in Danville. I certainly understand what people are talking about. How are we helping families that are having issues with connectivity?
Well, what we've started to do is I've been working with case managers. Those that cannot afford or have any internet at home, we've been sending them Wi-Fi hotspots directly from Verizon. That's a device that will connect to a cell signal and make it a Wi-Fi signal. So I've sent out 3 of those so far. But in terms of,
how do I know as a parent that I can ask for one of those?
That's a good question. I think the case managers have been identifying those. And I can say that on Pickup Patrol, I know what Pickup Patrol is, right? That's where you put in your absences. If you put in that we have a new category called lack of technology or lack of access to technology. If you put that in as a reason, we're tracking that, and it's a way for us to find families that are having problems with getting online, and we'll follow up with them. So at that point, there would be a follow-up call. Like, did you have a device issue for the day? Was your internet down for the day? Do you not have internet? And I think that's where we're discovering them, is that they're not, participating online.
Okay, I think we need to think about putting out something, especially again to the outlier towns that have poor internet connectivity, like Sandown and Danville, to cue people in, because I may not think of the fact that I have a bad internet connection as lack of technology for the day. So
well, I should say that the hotspot connection isn't a better substitute than having Comcast or Consolidated. If you have a Consolidated or Comcast Xfinity connection, that's a superior connection than a hotspot connection, because that's going to be dependent on your cell signal to broadcast that out. So
Some of Acton still has a DSL dial-up connection.
Yeah.
But I also know that Verizon is pretty non-existent in some parts of Atkinson, so having a Verizon hotspot would be absolutely useless. Well, in my house, anyway.
right, and that's kind of what I'm getting
Yeah.
at, is that if you don't have that Verizon signal, then that hotspot's not going to be very useful.
Right.
But those that have Xfinity or Consolidated at home and are having issues, I strongly encourage them to talk to those companies. There should be no charge to have them come out and check out your internet and make sure it's working correctly. In my own case, I have Consolidated. In the spring, I was having some issues. I was maxing it out. Called them. They sent me a new router. Turns out my router was just really old.
Mhm.
So they sent me a new router, put it in, and it's, issues, knock on wood, no
Well,
issues since then.
maybe the email blast that you're putting out about volunteers, maybe we should blast out, we're here to help you with your technology issues in terms of connectivity.
Yeah,
and see what we can do.
And
Some
part of
people
my-
don't know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, no,
personally, until you call up Comcast and tell them that you're going to go to somebody else, they don't ever give you a new modem. And then all of a sudden they give you lots of, sorry.
Yeah, they're not gonna be calling you
Slam on
attractive or
Comcast, but
offering
you know
you.
what I mean. So a lot of people just don't know that they can ask and get upgraded. Lee?
Maybe just a tech tip e-blast.
And that's,
right?
yeah, in my update was actually mentioning that, where we were going to talk about Chromebook tips and tricks. We're going to put in there Zoom, and we can certainly put in there some internet updates as well. Some things you can
How to
look
run
at.
a
If you're
speed
having
test.
troubles at home, think about calling your internet service provider and having them do some tests for you, and
Mhm.
maybe you can get an upgrade. You're due for one. So that's something we're going to blast out to the families as well. Yeah.
Great. Sheila?
Any update on our Chromebooks?
Yeah, it's not a good one. The new ship
Glad I
date is
asked.
September 30th now. It
Okay.
was the 20th, so it slipped a little bit. So it's kind of like we were talking about before. We were looking at really October. So
Okay.
that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Barbara. Kim's. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, Mr. Henderson, I'm really glad to see that we've got about, we could handle 5 times more capacity than we have now in the schools for the internet, so that's great. But on the Chromebook update, could you repeat, was it that the delivery date or the shipping date?
That's the shipping date. So
Thank you.
probably another couple weeks beyond that for us to show up on the dock.
And how are we doing with filling people's needs?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've handed out, in addition to about 300 in the spring, about another 600 this fall.
Right.
We don't have infinity amount of Chromebooks. We're getting a little low. That being said, we have filled anybody that's asked, that's reached out, and this is ongoing. We have been able to get them a device.
That's what I wanted
And
to know.
we had some donations, which we're very thankful for. Barbara on the board, donated a couple devices. Kat donated some Chromebooks and reached out to the class of 2020, which was great. So we've seen some donations we're very thankful for, and we're making sure they get in the hands of students that need them.
Great. Okay. As long as we're keeping up, it's good.
Okay, moving on. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. MOU updates. The MOU with the TTA was signed. We failed to make a motion in public to authorize the chair to sign. I have signed it already. I'm looking for a motion to authorize the chair to sign the TTA MOU, and also the TSSU MOU is continuing to be worked on. I would like to seek a motion to authorize the chair to sign that if it should come through here in the next week or two.
I think we're on the penultimate version. We're hoping to be able to wrap it up soon.
Okay.
Make that motion?
Sean?
I'll second, but could I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to just recall, is it this board, I don't think we did it on this board, but on the SAU board, we had a general motion allowing the board to sign in general legal instruments or something.
Oh, to allow the board chair to sign?
I mean, I don't know if it would be worthwhile putting forward a motion like that with MOUs or whatnot. I wouldn't want these things to be held up any longer than necessary while waiting for us to meet.
Well, I don't see anything coming down the road that
okay.
would, I understand what you're saying, but yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea given what's going on right now, but maybe next meeting we can look at the language that the SAU used to give the chair that authorization.
Okay.
Thank you. Kat?
Is this for both of them?
So yes, I'm looking for a motion to authorize the chair to sign the TTA and the TSSU MOUs.
Okay.
So there was a first and second on that motion, right? That was the motion?
Sean made the motion, I seconded, yes.
Okay, all in favor? 8-0. Okay, thank you. You also have in your packet a report from the Lawson Group regarding ventilation assessment. We will be discussing this in a non-public because it involves some issues that we have with personnel. The next item on the agenda is the SAT update. There's an executive summary. Did anybody have any questions on that? I'm at the SAT. Oh, the Lawson Group we will be discussing in non-public.
No, I missed the SAT part. Sorry.
SAT is next.
SAT, I just want to take one moment and just speak to it so the public can hear.
Yeah.
The district was provided with two possible dates for the fall administration of the SAT school day, September 23rd or October 14th. The high school will administer the SAT to current seniors on Wednesday, October 14th. Scores will be available in early November. Students will take a paper pencil version of the assessment, including the essay portion of the exam, as the digital version of the SAT school day will not be available for schools to use this fall.
Thank you, Jen. I wanted the public to know that as well.
Okay.
Because every single SAT date, pretty much from
Right.
August until
So I
November,
assume
been canceled.
Timberlane seniors will have priority for this date, correct?
Why?
So this is actually the SAT school day for the seniors who missed it in the spring.
Right.
So New Hampshire for RSA, has a state testing requirement. The New Hampshire DOE requires all public and charter schools to provide equitable access to this assessment. And because the juniors or the current seniors missed this exam the spring of their junior year, this exam is actually for those seniors who missed it as a junior. So this is the SAT school day specifically for those seniors.
But isn't that all the seniors?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can we put that on the-
I guess misspoke.
I was a little confused
Sorry.
on that.
It's for seniors. It's for the
Okay,
senior class.
so my only question is, this is a Wednesday, this is a full remote day, so are you bringing them all in?
So we're still working through the logistics. We didn't get to choose that date.
Okay.
That date was set by the state and by the college board. So we are looking at, what are the logistics behind that, busing, transportation issues. There is a makeup date that was not put on this executive summary of Tuesday, October 27th. So that is a school day. That is a day that we would have transportation. We are discussing what does transportation, what does the logistics look like on that day.
Actually, I would think that'd be
This
kind
is
of a
just
better
for
day,
seniors.
the
This is
Wednesday,
just for
because nobody's
seniors,
here.
correct.
Yeah.
So most seniors can figure something.
Well, and we didn't want to just make that assumption that most
Right.
seniors could get there themselves and drive. It's one of those things that we're looking at. We're trying to coordinate with the, we haven't reached out to the bus, to Ms. Hodgkins yet to coordinate that. Looking at how many seniors can drive versus how many seniors are taking our transportation to work out those logistics.
I just think it kind of works out better to do it that Wednesday with nobody in the building.
It actually does. It kind of worked out to our benefit where we have the ability to now, we don't have to displace classes and use classrooms.
Right.
We've looked at how can we, and sort of use a part of the building where Mr. Paradis can still get his crew in to sanitize the rest of the building while we're using that area and he can sanitize after. So, we're doing all that coordination right now.
Can we get that on the high school website as an announcement?
We can, yep.
Yeah, it's
Thank
just,
you.
I've had so many parents reach out, just frantic as they've been watching their
No,
SAT dates get canceled in other buildings. So yeah, the information just needs to get out there.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to withdrawal, I asked for this to be put on the agenda. You'll see in your packets, there's an initial staffing plan. This is really what the withdrawal committee had come up with. These are really the senior positions in the new SAU that we will have moving forward. We will be looking to start hiring for new positions in the SAU over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. Some positions will be going up fairly soon as we try to move forward. I think the board talked about this at one point, is we feel that the best approach to use is that all positions in the new SAU will be essentially new hires. So even people in those positions would need to apply for those positions because Timberlane is leaving SAU 55. Those will have to become new positions. So this is the SAU staffing list. Obviously, the top of that list is the superintendent. I have spoken with Dr. Cochran. We do want to get the superintendent search committee up and running. I've asked Kristen Savage to chair that from the board, and Mrs. Allaire has agreed to co-chair from the administration. So those two will be co-chairing that search committee. Dr. Cochran's reached out to the New Hampshire School Board Association for their guidance and consulting on approaching the superintendent search. They will give us as much or as little assistance as we need. The more assistance we need, the more it will cost us. So that will be up to that committee to decide how to move forward. I would anticipate that we would try to get the committee up and staffed and preliminary questions, the job description, so that we can be looking for a posting date no later than January 1. I think after the new year makes sense to post. Would you agree, Dr. Cochran? Or earlier?
It could be earlier.
Okay.
If we post in early November, then typically it would finish before the Christmas break.
Okay, so we'll look for early November then. We'll back that up. So that committee will need to form fairly soon to make a decision, as do the members.
Do you have a timeline on the rest of these?
The timeline, and if you don't have this, the staffing is the superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of student services, business administrators, lead accountant, payroll, maintenance, food service. Actually, there's not the food service director, that's a Whitson's. I think we had this discussion. Technology director, director of HR. We don't have a timeline yet for these. We will be posting the advertisement for a business administrator within the next week. That would be the chief financial officer. It's important to bring that person in early. Our consultant that we hired as part of the withdrawal transition stated that it would probably take us about 6 months for the business administrator to get up to speed and move to a new system and start up a new budget cycle. So we'd hope to hire somebody for that position fairly soon.
The draft posting indicates a January 4th start date.
Okay, so that job posting will be in
The
January.
posting has been forwarded to HR Director Loisel, and we had discussed this afternoon the posting date, and then when we would start screening applicants. So we're finalizing the posting. We'll post on our own website, and we'll also, I've requested that we post the position on Ed Jobs New Hampshire and also School Spring. And there'll be some information there with a link to our website where the larger body of information will be available, as well as the application process.
Okay, thank you. Does it make sense to post outward, like the New Hampshire Municipal Association, or will that not draw?
Ed Jobs and School Spring usually cover it pretty well.
Okay.
We're gonna, by posting when we are for the BA position, people will just be kind of lifting their heads from the sort of confusion of getting us through the opening in this pandemic. So we're delaying it to this long in the year, but we still feel we'll have time to do a complete search before then. You know, the timing works, and we believe that we'll have a applicant pool based on the timing. So my last conversation with Mr. Martin, he suggested those timelines as the most appropriate for our particular situation.
Great. Board members, you also have an audit update. It looks like we're looking to get the final audit report by September 30th. That would be wonderful. I know Mr. Boyle got the final SAU budget for the year. I will forward that out to the rest of the board members. If you haven't done that yet, Brian, have you forwarded?
I have not done that yet.
Mr. Boyle. Okay, moving on.
Get Sharon on that.
Get Sharon on that, Brian. First reading on the policies. Jen, I'll turn it over to you and Lee.
Oh, boy, these are new policies. They're quite lengthy.
Well, this is a first read, so we'll just look to...
So there's really no changes or updates for me to mention. They are
brand new.
Completely new, yes.
I'll make a motion to move the first read and give us 2 weeks to...
Yeah, I mean, the EBCG, communicable and infectious diseases, obviously that is a pretty lengthy, and I'm not sure if this was going to replace one or it just incorporates all, there's a lot of other related ones that go into this.
I think this is the one that
And addresses the current situation that we're in with the pandemic.
This was part of the spring release from the School Boards Association, and it's strongly recommended given the circumstance.
Oh, and I would imagine the next one is to the electronic digital records and
Yes.
signatures.
Correct. Yes.
So the New Hampshire School Board Association did come out with some policies with subsequent to COVID so that we could, the school boards didn't have to make them up themselves. So these are all coming out from them.
Well, I motion to move first read.
I'll second. Oh, sorry, no, I usually don't second. Somebody want a second?
I'll second.
Jen seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Barbara? Aye. 8-0. Okay, let's see what's next here.
It's so long.
Administrators report?
I'm sorry?
Do you have anything to report?
No, I think this is probably enough reporting for one night.
Okay, well, that's good. Is there a personnel report?
No, there was not.
Okay. One thing that just came to my attention, Kat, we should have had a non-public set of minutes for the last meeting.
I did turn them in.
Brian, do you have them in your do you have like a set of non-public minutes that,
No, I do not.
okay, can we just make a note that we need those non-public minutes at our next meeting because those need to be approved?
Yeah, they weren't in the agenda packet either.
What?
They weren't in the agenda packet online.
Well, no, they wouldn't have been because they were non-public, they were sealed.
They're usually in our packets when we get here tonight. That's
Right, they're
sealed.
usually just hard copy, or Kathy Belcher usually has a copy of them with her and then passes them out. Okay. Are there any other committee reports or reports of the school board? Anybody? Do curriculum meet, Sarah?
We met, CNA met on Tuesday. God, this week is crazy. So we basically, it was a good meeting. We met via Zoom. We welcomed some new members because we've had some changes in staffing. We reviewed the vision, the mission, and our 3 goals, and made some modifications to our goals around the strategic plan and the changes that we've made, you know, what education kind of looks like right now in the district. And then we also discussed briefly a couple topics for next month around summer learning and what was the other one? Shoot. Jen, do you?
Summer learning
It was
and
summer learning and one other, sorry.
PE.
PE, yes, yep, the PE requirement, yep. So those will be discussed in greater length in our October 6th meeting, but it was just great to get the committee up and running, so.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Do we have the payroll vouchers or?
They're not here. I didn't see them.
Okay. We have not been, is Mr. Dowd here?
He's right there.
Right.
Oh, sorry. We have not been receiving payroll vouchers online or in person. Is there a reason? That was intentional, yes.
Well
yes.
done, well done.
Yes, but the problem is I haven't entered the non-public yet, so.
Well done. Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, the intent with the payroll vouchers had been that we could all, you'd sign them when you were in present, and in the current situation that we're in, I was optimistic that we would not be in, that we could actually pass them around and that would be safe to do. So I'm going to just load them electronically as I've been doing. I really could not have predicted and would not have anticipated and would never have hoped that there would not be a situation that we could not physically pass around documents safely. I'm beside myself. So I'll get them on and we can just
Just sign them like we have been.
in a normal way. Yep. If you don't mind me asking, is everyone getting the emails?
I'm not having a problem getting them, but if I don't sign something, it comes back to me 18,000 times, even though there's 7 other signatures or 8 other
Right,
signatures.
even once has enough signatures, it keeps coming if you don't sign it.
I'll turn the reminder off because I'm going to it'll end up in someone's.
Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Junk letter.
count 5.
Right, no, it doesn't, and that's
No.
the limitation that they have, yeah.
Just keeps reminding,
So
yeah.
if there's 8, there's 7, it just
Yeah.
keeps coming
Keeps
back,
going.
and I go in and I'm like, they signed it.
I know, I started deleting them because but I mean, I think they're
All right,
all
thank you. Anything else before we're gonna move into a non-public?
Okay, just one last thing, in
Sean?
regards to those documents, Jeff, can we remove, since we were previously worried about some of the information in there, and then we have the redactions in there, can we eliminate all the redactions in there, because these are all coming to us in a secure method, and we're actually executing them, so we should be able to see everything on there.
Oops.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? So I'm looking for a motion to enter a non-public under 91A:3, paragraph 2, section A and C.
So moved.
Second.
Sheila makes the motion, Sean seconds. Kat, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka?
Barbara?
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's.
Yes.
Mrs. Mockamer.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mrs. Silva.
Yes. Kim?
Public?
My glasses keep fogging up, it's driving me insane.
I've never understood that rule previously relative to that you're a member, and as long as everybody can participate in it, I see no reason why.
Because you don't know who else
It's
is.
kind of like Zoom, right?
I
So if you
know.
test to, yes, I'm alone in the room.
Oh, okay, so we're going to move into the other room for the non-public?
Are we coming back out into public?
No, you can cut off the
Public portion?
public portion. But
Barbara,
be
we'll call you
wary,
back.
mics may still be on, board members.